So I have never shared this publicly, actually.
Oh, do you
Yeah.
mind?
No, so I was, oh yeah, I was assaulted when I was in my early 20s. And so it just kind of turned my life upside down. So
Right.
it was identity things, people who you thought supported you, you know, you looked really strong, and you just kind of had to, like, you had to figure out what happened, like going through that grief process of what the heck happened, like this wasn't my fault, all these sorts of things were all those emotions that I was going through. And when you think of the concussion client and the PCS client, the people who have those persistent symptoms, you know, their identity is turned upside down, like their support
Mm-hmm.
systems are rocked, they start to quite like, could things have been done differently? And so that realm of concussion is a realm I understand. I've never had a
Oh,
concussion, but
okay. I was just gonna say, but that the
yeah,
whole feeling
but the
behind the whole
feeling behind
experience,
everything of people telling
right?
you, well, you look fine, like you
You're
look
like,
okay, and you're like, thanks, I'm
thanks.
not, like, so I get that, which, and so people always ask me, like, how can you relate to the concussion client so well when you've never had a concussion? And that's why, like, I can relate so strongly to the emotional piece that comes along with that, and your
Right.
life being turned upside down for some people because of that. And so the
Mm-hmm.
person who literally helped me through that was this family member who'd had their own TBI. And so when it comes to like why I'm so passionate in this clinical piece, it's like the melding of all my worlds. It's the person who, I look at the family members who don't get the support, who still don't understand because it happens all the time. And there's no reason for that to be happening today at all. None. Then I look at the people who are struggling with concussion, who are still getting really shitty advice. Sorry, am I allowed to, if I, sorry, I'm not allowed to swear.
Sure.
Um, so people who are
Just
getting
certain words we don't use, but we can swear like that.
people who are getting like horrible advice, they're not being guided properly, and they're living with these
Yeah.
symptoms, or told they just have to live with it when they don't have to. Then you get the fact that I completely understand like the emotional piece that comes along with that. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have my, like, I love understanding the inner workings of the brain. I love it. It fuels that curiosity in me and that educational piece in me. So literally working with my clients is like this collision of so many worlds and aspects of my life that I just pour that passion into my clients and education and awareness.
Wow. So like I mentioned, well, I mentioned we were just chatting that my daughter, she's 18 now, but she had two concussions back to back, and I feel, and so one of them was she was playing flag football, and basically two girls like literally like ran into and peeled off each other, like they like boom, and both of them like passed out on the ground like literally for a couple of minutes. You know what? And at, for me, that was the one moment I wasn't watching.
Oh,
I turned my head. I
oh,
thought like turn around and like whose kids on the ground? I'm like, oh my god, I think it's mine. uh, so that was the first one, and then the second one. And the funny thing is, um, Natasha, is that as a mom, and and maybe all parents should listen to this. So as mom, you're like, no, you know, like you're okay, you're gonna be fine. And that was me. Like I was like, you know, maybe she's faking it. I'm gonna be completely raw. This is what goes through these, you know, parents' heads. Maybe she's faking it, maybe it's not real, you know, she's just making it up. And that's what I was going. I'm like, you're gonna be okay. She's like, yeah, but I got headaches. And I'm like, I'm just not feeling good. And I'm like, oh, come on, let's just go do something, you know. And 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 I just think about that summer of her trying to navigate and me not being compassionate about it. And I feel like shit, actually, now that I really, really think about it, you know, and I was, and, you know, the need to maybe go, like, we did go get her checked,
mhm.
but and I find the thing is like, when you're dealing with something like that, it's like, what do you check? Like,
Oh, we
do
can
you
talk about
go
that.
for
Yeah.
brain scans? Do you go for x-rays? Like, MRIs, like what is it and how would you even be able
No.
to Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, what else do you think we should do? Like, how do I solve this for you? How do I make you not feel like shit every day? And
Yeah.
then, so there's that. And then she got like completely creamed on the ski hill. Have you ever seen two people fall? Well, and I was there that day. And then it was whiplash. Like she didn't hit her
Mhm.
head. I'm sure she hit her head on the way down, but then that was like the neck
Mhm.
with the head, and from there it was all downhill. Like, she was a month out of school. Um and oh my gosh, like, what do you tell parents in that situation? Like, I want to cry, but what do you tell them?
So let's squash a couple myths real quick.
All right,
So,
let's do it.
so one, especially because I know a lot of your listeners are cyclists as well. So it does not matter if you're wearing a helmet, because a helmet does not stop you getting a concussion.
Exactly, yeah.
That piece. Number two, you don't need to lose consciousness to have a concussion at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be just from kind of that force and that whiplash. Concussion is an acceleration deceleration injury, right? And it's the forces that are then transmitted to the brain that
Right.
cause that shearing and this neurometabolic cascade that happens within the brain. There's all these physiological pieces that I just actually shared a graphic on my Instagram this last week, but you
Oh,
can't see them. And you can't see them on imaging either. So when you're questioning about like, what do we do to get her checked?
right.
If someone does a CT or they do an MRI or they do an X-ray, they're doing those things to make sure that there's no fractures or no more like pathological things. So no bleeds, no subdural hematoma, like none
Right.
of that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because none of what actually happens within that brain shows up on standard imaging.
Right.
So a concussion causes a neurological disturbance in the firing of the neurons and all this metabolic stuff, but you can't see any of that.
Yeah.
And when you think back to when we were kids and people got concussions, right? It was like, shake it off and go back and like, go do your thing. Like you're
Yeah.
fine. Like it's fine. It's nothing. And now we're in the midst of like, one of my big things is increasing that awareness for parents, for people themselves, because my son races BMX.
Yeah.
And the knowledge of concussion in that industry is not great.
Yeah. I can imagine. It's guys, right? It's like
Yeah.
you fall, you get up,
Get
you
up,
keep
get on your
going.
bike. Oh
Yeah,
God,
yeah, finish it up.
the horror stories I've heard of like, he got up, he threw up, he got up and rode the next moto. And I was like, what? Like,
You send them to see me over there.
yeah. So one of my big things is like, we need to increase the awareness and the education. I mean, you look at the research and it's changing so rapidly. In 2012, we talked about, having to rest for 3 weeks or several weeks is kind of where we need to do. And it's not detrimental. Now we're saying you rest for 48 hours and then you gradually start to increase activity. But here's the thing. So who did you get your daughter checked out by? When you say like, we got her checked out, who did she see? I'm guessing a doctor. Oh no, just like
Well,
profession.
oh, I think it was a neurologist.
Okay. So most people get a concussion and they go see their GP, and then they might do a referral to a neurologist. If the GP is not comfortable with kind of concussion, then they'll refer
Mm-hmm.
to a neurologist, because that thought process is it's my general practitioner and the neurologist understand the brain. So that must be the proper path, right?
Right.
Usually not. Only because, and every profession is different, but concussion is that functional disturbance within the brain. So you have to, what gets assessed is your person's function. So the people that ultimately, yes, you need to go to I say always go to your general practitioner, because it needs to be in your medical history and all that stuff.
Right.
And then
Yeah,
if they are concerned about x-rays or images, then they are the ones that need to make that referral for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But then you want to connect with someone like a physical therapist. That's usually my go-to initially, who is trained and knowledgeable in concussion. The PT profession is huge. And
Yeah.
there's some of us that have chosen to niche down, like myself.
Mm-hmm.
But what the profession does is when you go for an assessment, it's so much more than asking questions. I work with some youth hockey players, and I remember I had this one kid who we were rehabbing him from his concussion, and he had just went for a regular like doctor's appointments, and his symptoms had disappeared. His symptoms had been gone for about a week. And so he went to his doc, and his doc, the assessment from his doc was just asking questions. And when he said he was symptom free, the doc was like, okay, cleared to play. Luckily, his dad listened to me.
Oh God.
Because my response was, no, like, I'm not clearing you to play. And the kid couldn't understand. And so what's important to know too is just because your symptoms go away, particularly in that acute, does not mean your brain has recovered. And with this kid, what I could do is, because I'd assessed him previously, I had objective outcome measures that I could show him. Look at your sway pattern in your balance. Look at how slow your reaction time still is. Look at the stuff like you're not ready to go back, especially on the ice. So when someone comes in to get an assessment, and when we're trying to figure out, you know, are they like, what do we need to work on? What do we need to rehab? We're looking at a global assessment. We're looking at vision. We're looking at vestibular. We're looking at the neck. We're looking at their autonomic nervous system. We're looking at the ability to push themselves in exercise. We're looking at symptoms. We literally do a global systems assessment to see what is working well, what's not working well. And then we, in the acute stage, we guide them in this graded exposure to environments and to activity again. So in your daughter's case, we talked about she struggles with headaches, right? Yeah. Headaches can come from like 5 different places. So just throwing medication at a headache, or just saying, okay, I'm going to go for massage. What if that's not the reason the headache is happening? Then she's always going to have headaches because you don't know the root cause of why the heck it's happening. So that's why connecting with someone who really understands that those elements and how they kind of interact together are the people that need to be helping you kind of move through a concussion and rehab through a concussion.